Well, welcome everyone to another episode of WA This Week. First up, same old from this state government. More waste of your money and more secrecy from a government who doesn't want you to know. The Tourism Minister, Roger Cook, initiated a tourism campaign. We're told somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million was spent on the campaign. What did the government do with it? Completely scrapped. Just imagine running your own business like that. You go and spend $2 million on something, and then before you even use it, you throw it out. But in this case, this is public money that could be used for all the purposes we've talked about on a number of occasions, those dreadful issues of homelessness, the crisis in our health system. But the minister won't say, in fact, how much money was wasted, won't say what's happened with all of that money, won't tell the public of Western Australia what's gone on. This is a government, as I've said many times, they're completely out of touch. Imagine that. You let $2 million be spent on a campaign and then it's apparently so bad that you can't even use it. Complete negligence in the management of it, a complete waste of your money, and now Minister Cook clamming up, refusing to disclose exactly how much of your taxpayer money has been wasted. We saw the state government come out last week and announce changes to the fishing industry and the quota. One of the things you might know about me, I'm a scientist, I like science, and I trust that people in Fisheries Department do good modelling on our fisheries. It's been known for some time that the demersal fishery, as they call it, there's certain species of fish are being overfished, and those are fished both by recreational fishers but also by commercial fishers as well. But what the government's come out and said that they're going to, for the southwest, which is really from Kalbarri down and around the coast, close the fishery for up to 9 months. Now, I think a number of you would know, I suspect a number of you are fishers and you go out there and enjoy catching some fish, but they've done this without consultation with the industry. They haven't spoken to the recreational fishers, or at least taken their concerns seriously. You shut down that industry for 9 months of the year, then towns like Kalbarri are going to have their economy destroyed because they critically rely on fishers who visit the town and come there to do a bit of fishing and then otherwise to holiday with their families. If people can't come there and catch fish, then there are going to be far fewer people coming to those towns, but it's not just Kalbarri, it's all of those small coastal communities down the coast and around to the southwest. So the Recfish West in particular has come back to the government, or at least tried to present to the government a proposal. They recognise the need to preserve the fishery. They recognise that the science is indicating that that the fish numbers are decreasing for certain species, so something has to be done. But they're saying do it in a way that doesn't destroy the industry and doesn't destroy those communities that depend on tourists who want to go somewhere and fish. And the government needs to listen to them. They need to consult properly. You know, we see this time and time again with this government. They love to come out and say they've consulted, but what we hear time and again is that what they do is come out and tell people what they're doing, and then they say they've consulted. They did this recently with the forestry industry. Now, you'd remember, and I won't go through all the details of the dreadful failure of the government in their decision to close the forest industry, but the Shire President of Manjimup has come out publicly recently and said that the government simply hasn't consulted with the community on their so-called rescue package. And that's really critically important. An industry that employs 6,000 people in the southwest of the state. And again, they haven't consulted with the Shire, they haven't consulted with the affected industries. And here we are with the fishing industry, exactly the same thing. The government just comes out, says what it's going to do. You know, they feel that they've got absolute control because they've got absolute control of Parliament. They can do what they like, and they are, but they're ignoring you, the people in the community. Pretty distressing, I think, for everyone listening to the outcomes or reading the outcomes of the Ashwarya inquiry. And this was a dear young girl who who died once she'd gone to the Children's Hospital for treatment. Her parents were concerned about her health, and I won't go through all the details. I mean, obviously mine and everyone's sympathy goes to the parents. I mean, just unimaginable to have a young child die in those circumstances where you would feel they should be safe. But obviously every time it comes up in the press, and obviously for this inquiry, it must be just unimaginably distressing for the parents. And as I say, my deepest sympathies go to the parents. But what we've heard in this inquiry is a tale that we knew before, and that is that we had a hospital system utterly overwhelmed, completely understaffed. We've heard that the doctor who initially saw the young girl, little Ashwarya, only had 19 seconds, I think it was said, but a short time to see her because he was so overwhelmed looking at other patients. The triage nurse, and that's the nurse that's responsible for deciding whether patients are seriously ill or whether they're, they may be ill but they can, wait for their treatment. She was doing 3 separate jobs on that evening and trying to cope with that. And I've heard that directly from staff at that hospital. Utterly overwhelmed. You know what the Premier and Roger Cook were saying at the time, and for some considerable time after? They were coming out and defending themselves because we were saying clearly there's an issue with staffing, and they're saying no, in fact they had all the staff they should have on, and in fact the Premier made a boast that they had more staff than they actually were required to have. Well, what's come out in this inquiry is that hospital was completely understaffed, and the poor staff there were completely overwhelmed. And I have obviously, as I've said, I have the greatest and deepest sympathy for the parents who, are the most affected by this. But also I have deep sympathy for the staff in that hospital. And can I say, not just then, but now, because those staff and the staff today are utterly overwhelmed in the hospitals. They are not getting the support from the government they need. And this is a government that stopped doctors and nurses coming into the state during the pandemic. Now, we said to them at the time, this was crazy. You shouldn't stop key workers coming into the state. But the state government, because the Premier wanted to be the tough man against COVID, because he wanted to play to the public audience, look, he did politically well out of that. But one of the prices we've paid in our hospitals and are paying today, or the patients are paying today, is a complete lack a complete inadequacy of staff, doctors and nurses and other health professionals in our hospitals because they were stopped from coming in overseas. So this inquiry certainly is putting a lie to the statements that the Premier and the Health Minister, Roger Cook, at the time made. Let's see what comes out of this inquiry, but it is very, very clear that the staff in that hospital were just completely overwhelmed, and that has to have been a major contributor to the situation that's eventuated. Thanks very much for listening to WA This Week. I've got out and about this week, and I've been to the Darwin Field Day. I've been up to the Gascoyne to see people up there and had good feedback from people who listen to the podcast. So thanks very much for doing that. Please share it. You can get this as a podcast on any of the platforms now. So if you just look up WA This Week, you can find that. Please share it with your friends. Also, if you look at YouTube, or you look at Facebook or LinkedIn and look for Dr. David Honey, then you can find this and you can get the video. So share it with your friends. Please get the message out. Positive feedback, negative feedback, we love it. So give us the feedback. That helps us improve, and otherwise get the message out about the failings of this McGowan Labor government. Thank you.